Welcome back to part 2 of our weaving project. Today we're going to take all of those lovely papers that you did last time with the watercolor washes, and we're going to start adding some patterns to them that eventually we're going to fill in with some tempera paints. That means when you're doing these patterns, you want them to be a good size, at least the size of your thumb, if not a little bit wider. But don't draw lines in between, because when we weave these together, your weave may not be exactly on that line. So when I'm talking about patterns and shapes, things that you can color in, you want to make sure that they're nice and big. For example, you might like video games. So maybe you do a pattern of video game characters. And a pattern is anything that repeats over and over again. So in this case, it would be Pac-Man. And you notice I'm going pretty big in my space. I'm not going really small. I want to keep it close to the tops and the bottoms of that strip, so as I'm weaving, it shows up better. And since it's a pattern, I'm going to repeat it over and over again. I can't stress enough making sure that you keep these nice and big so that they show up. Plus, bear in mind you're going to be painting them and filling them in, so you want them to be big enough that your paintbrush is going to be able to easily fit inside the lines. If you get too small, your paintbrush will not fit in there, and it'll make kind of a goopy mess, and you probably won't be too happy with the results. We want you definitely to be happy with the results for as much work and effort as you have already put into this project. So there's example number 1 of about the size they should be. I'm going to do the rest of these in fast motion. Now that you have the first set done with symbols, your second set, I missed one, I'm going to have to go back and do that one. Your second set's going to be done more with lines and shapes. Now you'll notice if I'm doing some sort of a line pattern that the top one touches the bottom, but the top one touches the top, sorry, but the bottom one does not touch the bottom. That's because I know I need to leave room to go back and put in the bottom portion of the line, like this. If I didn't leave that room, then I couldn't have a really thick line because it would keep running off the bottom of the page. Make sure you're leaving space for yourself and planning ahead when you're doing something like that. So next time when we meet up, we're going to start painting and filling in all of these little gaps before we weave them together. See you then! Of course, the next thing we're going to be working on this time is painting some of these in, so let's see what that looks like. I'm going to move these out of my way. I have a cup with some water, and I have 3 smaller sized brushes in here since we're working smaller size. And I'm going to have my Tempera Cake paints that I'm working with today. They're going to be off to the side. Try not to spill all over your desk like I just did. And you're going to just start with these one at a time. And you kind of want to pick colors that are either opposite colors, or if this is a cool color background, you might pick a warm color to put on top. It'll help it to pop and show up a lot more. When you mix with the tempera cakes, you're adding water to that tempera cake until it gets a nice cakey, painty texture. And then you're going to start filling in inside the lines as much and carefully as possible with your paint. Now you'll notice I leave my pinky on my paper. That's helping to support my whole hand so that I can stay inside those lines a little better. It acts almost like a little spring that lets me bounce up and down with my paintbrush. That'll be one thing that can help you to keep inside those lines and keep your hand a little steadier. I use the side of my brush. You can also tip straight up and down and use the point of your brush to make sure you stay inside of those spaces. And remember, it is a pattern, So we do want it to repeat in color a little bit, just like it repeats in shape and line a little bit. Of course, I'm not going to make you watch all of these in regular motion. I am going to speed it up here for the next ones. But I wanted to give you an idea of how careful I have to be when I'm going through these different spaces. Pick up some yellow over here, make it nice and thick when I'm mixing it up, because the yellow is going to be harder to see on top of my colors. It's a little bit more transparent, and that means you can see through it. So I have to make sure it's a little bit thicker when I'm pulling it out of the palette. The other thing that I could always do to make it show up even more is add a little bit of white to it. And then as you can see, it gives it a whole nother kind of color coat. It makes it a tint when you add white to it. Not quite as transparent, it shows up a little bit more. And now I have my first strip done, so I'll set it off to the side and let it dry and work on the others. You guys get the idea. So you're going to work on painting these for this class, put them on the drying rack, and we'll come back together and weave next time.